Now, when you're just starting out with photography, or if you're upgrading out of using the auto mode on your camera, you might be confused about some of the settings. Now, most of those settings on your camera adjust the exposure of your photo, because you can have the best eye for composition ever, but if your exposure is wrong, then your photo is not gonna look great. And the best way to learn exposure and these settings is by utilizing the exposure triangle that looks like this. Now you can see in the corners we have shutter speed, we have aperture, and we have ISO. Now shutter speed means how long the shutter in your camera in front of your sensor stays open. And this has two important effects on your photos. First one being that the longer it is open, the more light will enter your camera sensor, and therefore the exposure overall will be brighter. But another thing that shutter speed affects is how motion is depicted in your photos. If your shutter stays open for longer, the more motion is translated into your photo. Now, aperture means the opening of the blades inside your lens. So basically, the bigger the opening of the blades in your lens, the more light is entering into your camera, meaning the exposure overall is brighter. But the bigger that opening is and the smaller the f number is, less stuff in the photo will be in focus. So basically, as you open up that hole, the depth of field in the photo becomes more narrow. And the smaller that hole is, the bigger that depth of field grows, and the higher the f number will be. Now, last off is ISO. ISO is easiest to understand as your camera sensor's sensitivity to the light that is hitting it. So basically, you're not adding light in any way, but your camera sensor is more sensitive to that light, making the overall exposure brighter. But ISO has a very big downside as well. If you go too high on your ISO, the same effect happens as if you were turning your speakers all the way up with nothing playing. So when you do that, you start to hear that hiss. The same sort of thing happens with the camera, meaning that the photos themselves start to look grainy. You introduce digital noise into the photo. So that is why you always want to use the lowest ISO that you can, but don't be afraid to adjust it, because modern cameras are very capable at handling higher and higher noise levels, especially if you have a full frame camera. While it should be the last thing you adjust, don't be afraid to adjust it if you need it. But that's the basics of the exposure triangle. Now you know, so go out there, experiment, and have fun shooting.